Well, good morning and afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron Gorell, and thank you for joining us on our 1378th Justice Clearinghouse webinar, Lifelong Resilience, Building a Sustainable Career in Criminal Justice. You know, the work that we do in criminal justice takes a toll on all of us. It affects our mental and physical health, our relationships, even our life expectancy. Well, during our webinar this morning, Kate Manning is back to discuss the life shifts we need to consider to build a sustainable career, including boundary setting, creating a community of support, and recognizing our warning signs. She'll share how to make a thriving life and a career happen through the choices we make every day. Catherine Manning is the author of The Empathetic Workplace and the president of Blackbird DC. She has worked on issues of trauma and victimization for more than 25 years. And as a senior attorney advisor with the Executive Office for U.S. Attorneys for 15 years, Kate guided the Justice Department through its response to victims in cases ranging from terrorism to large-scale financial fraud and child exploitation. Kate now uses her expertise to help organizations prepare for and respond to the challenges they face involving employees and clients who may be in trauma. Now, I would like to extend a special thanks to our friend and partners for helping with this presentation. Today's webinar is done in partnership with the Women in Federal Law Enforcement. We truly appreciate our partnership with organizations like WIFL, who are so committed to enhancing and growing our profession. And now, briefly, before we begin, I'd like to share with you some information about Justice Clearinghouse. The Justice Clearinghouse is the only peer-to-peer, multidisciplinary educational program for justice professionals that offers the instruction and skills necessary to achieve both individual and organizational transformation. Through our year-round virtual conference, our audience and members develop those critical skills that are necessary to positively impact themselves and their communities. And while anyone can attend our live events, our paid members are able to access our content on their own schedule. With over 1,500 hours of recorded webinars, and are also eligible to receive certificates of attendance that may be used when seeking continuing education credits. So if you're not presently a member, I'd invite you to join today and support our work. Now, the last couple of things I'd like to address with everyone is some basic housekeeping items. First, this event is being recorded and the formal presentation is scheduled to last about 60 minutes. It will be available to members on the Justice Clearinghouse website. Second, this is a listen-only event, but you can type in any questions you have through the Zoom toolbar. We'll take as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. Now, I also wanted to mention to folks to have the chat box available. I know Kate is going to be asking a bunch of questions. She's looking for responses. And so I would invite you to use that chat response whenever possible. Now, we do have just one polling question that Kate asked us to incorporate into this webinar, and you'll need access to your mouse to participate. It should be in front of everyone now. How long have you been in your role or profession? And you can see we've got 5 different options. And then while you're selecting the appropriate response, I did want to make sure everyone know that after today's webinar, there will be a follow-up survey, and we ask that you complete it. Your feedback is shared with our presenters and helps shape everything we do here at Justice Clearinghouse. All right, Kate, we've got about 75% of the audience that has responded to the poll. So from less than 5 years is 25%, 6 to 10 years is 22%, 11 to 15 years is 11%, 16 to 20 is 12%, but the largest segment in our audience is more than 20 years at 29%, almost a third of the audience. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn the presentation over to our instructor for this morning. Kate, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Aaron, and thank you everybody for participating in that poll. That was fascinating for me to see the breadth of experience that we have among the attendees here. As Aaron mentioned, and let me just reiterate, I love to use the chat because to me, I want this to be as collaborative as possible. I know that you know a lot of information, you have advice and experiences that are beneficial for everybody else who's participating today. So there will be a few places where I ask questions. Please type your responses in the chat. I know that you're not going to be able to see other people's responses, but I will be reading out some of those responses. And it's just a way for us to make sure that we're all kind of benefiting from each other's knowledge as well. If you do, though, have a question that you want, something that comes out of the slides, or that you're thinking about, how does this apply in a certain context, use the separate box. I hope you see that Q&A box on the menu is next to the chat box. If you have a question for me to address at the end, please drop that in the Q&A. All right. So thank you so much for doing this. You heard a little bit about my background. Just to sort of flesh it out for you, I was a senior attorney advisor for victims' rights at the Justice Department for many years, for about 15 years. But I first started off doing hotline work. I started when I was in college doing hotline work at a local domestic violence shelter. I also did some volunteering at a rape crisis center. And really, I thought that was the field I was going to go into. I thought I would go on and do domestic violence work for my entire career. And then I tried it. One summer while I was in law school, I worked at a domestic violence shelter. My role was to get people restraining orders. So they would come in, sometimes through a call or otherwise. They would come in. We would meet with them, interview them, talk about what their needs were, and try to get them some legal help that they might need, which might be a restraining order, or it could be something like, assistance with getting a job or help with a divorce. I really thought that's what I was going to do with my career, and I couldn't last. I lasted 6 weeks and I had to stop. And I realize now, in retrospect, that the reason that I was not able to continue doing that work was because I did not have the tools to navigate interacting with people who are going through such brutal conditions every day. I had terrible boundaries. I sometimes joke about it now. I say, well, I had to stop because I was about to end up with a house full of women and children. And I think that's true, and it's sort of facetious. But the reality is that it was my inability to navigate my own response to what I was seeing and dealing with every day that meant that I had to switch out of what I thought my career path was going to be. Now, I'm very fortunate that I've been able to go on and support victims of crime and work in the criminal justice system without being on the front lines in the way that I was that during that time in law school. But it's that experience and numerous conversations that I've had over the years with people who are trying to build a decades-long career in criminal justice that made me think it would be worthwhile to spend a little time specifically on this topic. Not what it is that we can do to change the system or how do we navigate things in the moment, but what do we do? How do we organize our lives in a way that allows us to continue doing this work every day? Because we need good people like you continuing to do this work every day. And sadly, we're losing people every day. So I'm going to give you a second to read some of those statistics. I don't like reading statistics to people, but let me give you a second just to read and process those. And then I would love to hear in the chat your reaction to some of these numbers. Does anything here surprise you? I will tell you, I was shocked by some of these numbers, seeing them. Um, I mean, for me, this first bullet point is a new one for me. I had never seen these numbers with respect to probation and parole officers and correctional officers. Those seem incredibly high to me. I think, how on earth can you maintain any kind of stability in your workforce if you've got turnover rates as high as 55%? Interesting, in the chat, some people are saying, actually, I'm not surprised. Congress keeps cutting funding for police and probation. So yeah, absolutely. That's taking a toll. One person is saying, I thought it'd be even higher for POs just based on the turnover in our agency. Wow. So you're seeing numbers even higher than that. Lots of people saying not surprised. I will note, we were chatting a little bit, Chris and Aaron and I were chatting a little bit before the presentation, and they mentioned that there's going to be a discussion on May 16th about leadership in dispatch, like 911 dispatch, and they're seeing turnover rates as high as 70%. That's according to a Route 55 survey. Yeah, interesting. Oh, good. Thank you. Aaron has shared in the chat those numbers. Yeah, gosh, I'm just taking a real quick look at some of these comments. None of this is surprising. We're also pulling in far less candidates per opening and they're less well qualified. Is that something others are saying as well? One person is saying, I'm surprised by the victim advocate numbers. I'm curious about what you're surprised about. I will say what surprises me about that second bullet point is that it's not higher. I think how on earth can you be a victim advocate without experiencing secondary trauma? Yeah, let's see. Yeah, others are saying we're aware of these numbers. It's a horrible time in corrections. Vacancy rates for those jobs surprise me. A lot of people saying I'm surprised the numbers aren't even higher. Some people it looks like are having trouble with audio. If you are, I'm trying to just move my microphone a little bit closer to me, but if you're having trouble with audio, please chime in and I'll see if there's something else I can do about that. Yeah, somebody is saying that first point is real as this is my line of work. Yeah, this is what people are saying all the time. Not surprised at all, working in corrections 26 years. Former LEO, burnt out at 20 years, not a victim advocate, finally learning about self-care. Yeah, somebody's saying when government employees are being sued left and right, it doesn't surprise me. It's so unfortunate. Yeah, some are saying it's getting harder and harder to prosecute. Lots of times criminals beat our officers home after an arrest. Wow. And oh my goodness, one person is saying, I saved one of my brother's life from an attempt of suicide when I was on parole one night. Thank you. And I'm so, so sorry about that. I'm so grateful that you were there for him that night. Wow. Yeah. Somebody is saying child welfare has a 30% rate and most leave the field within 2 years. Yeah, a lot of people are saying that they would expect secondary trauma rates to be even higher. Um, yeah, lots of people talking about that burnout that they're experiencing. Um, yeah, not surprised on top of your own personal issues and struggles, you're constantly listening to the client struggles. Wow. So thank you all so much for sharing all of your thoughts and experiences. Oh, the question about parole and probation, does it include federal and state? I have, let me see if I can just drop this in. Um, Aaron, maybe you can drop this in the chat. This is the study for that, where that probation and parole rates came from. I will note that actually, I believe, is a survey from 2019. So this was even before COVID. We were seeing numbers like that. Oh, and somebody's making a great point that figure that we're all kind of puzzling over with victim advocates. Somebody's saying maybe it's taboo to voice secondary trauma. I've certainly heard that from victim advocates, that there's this sense that they're supposed to be able to do anything for their clients when they come in and have it never take a toll on them. And in their office, it's kind of seen as a weakness or a flaw to even mention the fact that having these conversations and seeing what you see every day can take a toll on you. It's such a shame. Well, I'm really, really grateful. Oh gosh, and somebody is saying lots of bullying within victim services. Isn't that horrible? Just horrific. Um, I'm curious about what it is that you think is leading to that. Just because I know a lot of you have different experiences around the country, different fields within criminal justice, as well as different numbers of years on the job. I'm curious about why you think the numbers are what they are. Like, why do you think turnover rates are as high? We've seen some comments on that, feeling like you're not being protected by your department. Yeah, somebody is saying many people who are drawn to service have high ACEs scores, those adverse childhood experiences. So that makes them kind of maybe more apt to experience secondary trauma. Some people are saying lots of people playing the good old boys game. Post-COVID world is really tough. Um, Yeah, I will say this is something I'm seeing a lot in the chat, particularly with respect to victim advocates, is there is this sense that you need to be caring and compassionate and trauma informed with your clients, but not necessarily receiving it in-house. So your leadership is maybe not supporting you in the ways that they expect you to support your clients. I'm really sorry to hear that. I think if anything, people who are leading organizations that are serving people in trauma need to be especially trauma informed. Other issues, people are saying it's stress level, workload, you can never catch up, no support from judges or counsel when filing violations. Yeah, really not feeling valued. My goodness, high caseloads, job turns out to be different than you thought it would be, too stressful, lack of agency support, missing resources, opportunities for our own people. Yeah. Undervalued. Oh my goodness, you all. This is so helpful. I'm gonna save these comments because this I think is really important for me to see. And I hope that others within your department are aware of some of these issues. One person is saying, starting off with COVID, more people are getting out of jail than ever before. Judges never went back to being more strict with people with keeping people in. Yeah, people are saying the challenge is you're battling your own people. But then others are saying, my leadership team has been a huge advocate for us, so that's helpful. Oh, and somebody is saying, how do we see other guest comments? That's not how this is set up. So you're not able to see each other's comments. That's why I'm trying to read them because I want you all to get the benefit of these really, really prescient and important remarks that people are making. So let me just say, and I'll kind of put a little bit more on the numbers. We've heard some great comments from all of you here. I just wanted to share a little bit of some of the other comments that I've been able to read online. Somebody is saying, yeah, thank you for keeping comments private. I think in some ways it's helpful for people to feel like they can be more honest. Yeah, gosh. Okay. So I just wanted to share some of the words of our colleagues in criminal justice, what it is that they're going through as well. These are all from um, public articles and surveys. Um, yeah, gosh, somebody is saying, I'm a domestic violence probation officer with a caseload of 140 DV males. That's stressful enough, but then you're also dealing with the victims. I do love my job, but you take a lot of it home. Absolutely. Yeah, and people are saying I'm feeling seen and heard through these quotes. I know that it is really hitting home, I think, for a lot of you. And that was part of my goal here at the beginning. I know we start off with a lot of kind of doom and gloom, but I wanted to do that because I wanted to normalize what it is what that I think a lot of us are experiencing. I want you to know you're not alone, that a lot of people are going through the same things that you're going through. And I think that one of the challenges is, um, when I think about what is so hard about building a sustainable career in criminal justice is that some of the reasons that we go into this field in the first place, right? Like, why do you choose to go into this field? Because you care, because you want to make a difference, because you are mission driven, right? That's why you have chosen to go into this career. It's not an easy one. You knew starting off that this wasn't going to be an easy field. But I think some of those same reasons that we chose to go into this field in the first place are the reasons that make it hard for us to sustain it because it is very, very difficult to turn it off. Because we care so much, because we want to make a difference, because somebody walks through the door and we can't stop thinking about them. That night when we're supposed to be having dinner with our family, our minds are still going back to, I wonder what's going on with that kid right now. So the very reasons that brought us into the profession are the things that lead to burnout. So let me just share a few definitions. And actually, before I do that, just a couple more comments. These are really wonderful comments here. I want to make sure that you all are seeing. One person is saying, I work with the Board of Pardons, and it becomes overwhelming dealing with offenders' families. You want to help, but there's nothing you can do. You have to remember the victims, and I can assure you, hearing the voice and cries of victims, it's not easy. Yeah, one person saying, as a survivor, I wanted to help others the way that I was helped. Exactly, exactly. Thank you. Another person says 911 communication supervisor here in our center. The morale is low, staffing is low, mandatory overtime at an all-time high. We've been pulling for a change in morale and better pay and a more competitive hiring process to encourage better applicants. Last year alone, we lost 39 people somewhere in the training process. We kept all those, or even half, would be completely staffed and then some. I know you're not alone. Thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing these comments. It's really wonderful for me to see, and I hope that you are getting the benefit of these as well. So I just wanted to share a few definitions. I often talk about secondary trauma and compassion fatigue. I wanted to use here stress and burnout because I think they're a little bit more all-encompassing. Um, Secondary trauma, is the trauma that we experience from interacting with people who are experiencing trauma. And it takes a toll on us, and it can show up in what's called secondary traumatic stress. Stress is a little bit broader term, and it can include things like the bullying, the lack of support we're getting from our manager, the high caseload, always having to be on all the time and not being given any opportunity to take care of yourself. All of that contributes to stress. Now, stress is something that it's normative, right? In the psychologist terms, that's what we are supposed to have a stress reaction. We were built that way. We are supposed to, for instance, if somebody shouts fire, we are supposed to feel a state of arousal because that's what causes us to take action that we might need to take to protect ourselves, right? So somebody shouts fire, our heart rate goes up a little bit, we start looking around, we're on alert, and that's the way we're supposed to be. But what's supposed to happen is we go up in that state of arousal and then we're supposed to come down afterward. The challenge is when somebody shouts fire and then somebody shouts fire and then somebody shouts fire and somebody shouts fire. And we just stay in that elevated state for days and weeks and sometimes years. Like we never have that calm that's supposed to come after the state of arousal. And what that can lead to is burnout. So if stress is in the moment, burnout builds up slowly over time. And that's what can be particularly challenging is we don't always catch it. We don't always realize that we have started to experience burnout. So I want to share with you here on this next slide um, just a few signs that we are beginning to experience burnout. And as I'm doing this, I would love, and you could drop it in the chat or just even make a note to yourself. Are any of these resonating for you? Like when you see this, do you think, oh yeah, yep, that one's me. Um, so I will just, lots of people are saying, yep, all of them. Anxiety, anger. Yeah, absolutely. That numbness. You know, let me just flesh out a few of them. So that hypervigilance is that sense of if I let down my guard for a second, everything's going to fall apart. Like I can't let go of the wheel for even a minute, you know? Um, that apathy or numbness, that's you are hearing something awful and you just can't even respond at all. Like you have no emotional response. And sadly, it's not just the hard things that you don't have an emotional response for. It's the good things too. So it's a birthday, it's graduation, and you see everybody around you seems really happy, and you kind of can't connect with that feeling at all. Yeah, and people are saying, yeah, forgetfulness as well, sadness, anger, fatigue, trouble sleeping. Lots of people are saying, yeah, a lot of these, many of these resonate. It's so hard to care for others when this is what's going on. Yeah, and somebody is noticing a lot of these are also signs of PTSD. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, doctor advised when I got shingles that it was stress related. Yeah, that weakened immune system. That's one that I experienced as well. When I was at the Justice Department, there were probably, I don't know, 8 years, something like that, where I got bronchitis every winter, and I would just be coughing for months. And I thought at the time, well, gosh, I guess I just have really weak lungs. And I will tell you, since I left DOJ, I have not had bronchitis a single time. I think I was burned out. Um, yeah, so lots of people this is resonating with them. Some people saying, I don't want to socialize with others. I just want to completely shut down. That's a very common one as well. Um, yeah, lots of guilt compounds itself onto it. Hard to shake that feeling of I could be doing more. Yeah, excellent. Really, really great comments. Yeah, and then others are noting that sometimes these can be exacerbated by things like alcohol use, some of the less healthier ways of managing the stress as well. Thank you so much for all of this, you all. Yeah, and Erin is saying, please remember to put any questions you have in the Q&A box. What we're going to do now, I want to just, now that I feel like kind of set the table a little bit in front of us so that we know um, what it is that we're dealing with and that we're not alone in dealing with it. What I want to do now is just share some advice. And this is my own hard-won advice as somebody who's been doing this for a long time myself and has myself experienced burnout and compassion fatigue. These are some of the things that have helped me. The way that I think of what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the presentation is I'm just going to be laying tools on the desk in front of you. And if it is a helpful tool for you, just pick it up and put it in your pocket. If it is not helpful, just leave it sitting there, okay? So, unsurprisingly, and some people are already talking in the chat about this one. First one is set and maintain your boundaries. I really do think that part of why I was not able to continue doing domestic violence work in my 20s was because I didn't have the boundaries that I needed to have. And I've sometimes thought we could do an entire hour just on boundary setting. We probably could spend a whole day talking about boundary setting. But as I've been thinking about it, I really feel like there's a few different aspects of it that I wanted to delve into a little bit more deeply. So first is this idea of what is it that we're willing to accept and what we're not willing to accept. So I think of this as kind of boundary setting in the moment. Um, so this is, Hugh McCutcheon is, for a little while, I had a podcast where I would interview different empathetic leaders, and one was Hugh McCutcheon. He's a volleyball coach, and I asked him, how do you handle bad behavior on your team? And he said, well, one of the things about behavior is you get what you tolerate. And I thought, oh, right. Like we are teaching people all the time how to treat us by what we're willing to put up with and what we're not. So one piece of this is being clear that our own energy matters, that us feeling whole and good counts. It is an important thing. It is actually better for everybody, including whoever this person is who's pushing on our boundary, for us to have healthy boundaries where we are able to protect our energy over the long term. So sometimes that means, yes, I will absolutely do that thing. I need a minute to walk around the block first because I know I am not going to be at 100% until I get that. Sometimes that means setting boundaries, frankly, with ourselves. Like, I'm not going to be able to get to that report tonight because I'm already up to here. So let me just get a good night's sleep and come back to this in the morning. Sometimes it's about the way people speak to you. I mean, I live with 3 teenagers. I get lots of practice on this boundary setting. Like, hey, you want to try that again? That came out probably ruder than you intended. So I do feel like some piece of it is just that in like quick one-on-one interactions, what are we willing to tolerate and what are we not? And in the comments here, I'm seeing that people are saying, one person saying, yeah, I have several books and resources that focus on boundaries. I would love if you would drop those in the chat and then maybe Erin can share them out with everybody. And then somebody is saying setting boundaries for the first time has made me out to be the bad guy. It is really hard. And I will tell you, when we first start to focus on setting our boundaries, it's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. And I sometimes think of it as like whenever we're learning something new, we're not going to be great at it at first. And particularly around boundary setting, it's almost like we have to be kind of middle schoolers first. I don't know if any of you have middle schoolers in your life, but sometimes they say things and they don't realize how rude that sounded, And sometimes with boundary setting, we're probably going to do that too at first while we figure out what we're doing. And that's okay. That's just part of it, is just recognizing I'm learning how to do this effectively. And I'm going to mess it up a little bit at first, but over time I will get better at it. It's something you just have to practice. And over time, I promise you will get better at it. Um, yeah, one person says, our chief always reiterates, what you permit, you promote. Ah, I love that. That's such a great quote. I love quotes. I'm gonna add that to my back pocket. Thank you for that. So yeah, one piece of boundary setting is just, what are we going to allow? What will we permit in the moment? But in addition, I just want to delve a little bit more deeply on some of this boundary setting. And this is really coming from my own experiences, particularly in domestic violence. So to me, when I was working in domestic violence, it seemed to me I'd be talking to, usually a woman, and I would think, she is in danger right now. We need to get her to a shelter. And here I found a shelter, so go to the shelter. Like, I will drive you if we need to. Like, let's get you to the shelter right now. And to me, it seemed like such a clear answer. And one of the things that I really struggled with was recognizing that sometimes, realizing that sometimes they were not going to do the thing that I thought was a really good idea. I mean, you are in danger. Let's get you to a shelter tonight. That seemed like a really a clear answer. But one of the challenges is I will never know as much as this other person about what is the right path for them. Okay. That's why this image is a path. I want you to remember we have to let them walk their path, not what we think their path should be, but their actual path. Um, One of the benefits of having worked with victims of crime for so many years now is I have seen that the person who is in front of you today is not who they will be in 6 months or 6 years or 16 years. They have a long, hopefully long journey ahead of them. Um, and we don't know what that journey is. I mean, I've seen people who come out of circumstances that were astonishing. I think how on earth could anybody survive this? And then go on to do amazing things, to get laws passed, to start foundations, to do these incredible works of art. Um, I don't know what their journey is, and if I try to short circuit it, they might not get where they need to get as quickly as they need to get there, and in the time that they need to get there. There was a woman I spoke to. She was somebody who did prisoner reentry, so she worked with women who were leaving incarceration and entering back into their communities, and she was a case manager. So her role was to talk with these women, find out what are their goals after they leave incarceration, and then help them meet those goals. So people would say, well, I want to get a job, or I want to stay off drugs, or I want to get my kids back. They would have these goals, and she would set up with them, brainstorm resources and timelines and all of that stuff. And again, what she would find is these women would not meet their goals. They would kind of fall off, and things would not go for them the ways that they said that they wanted them to go. And this woman who was telling me this story, her name is Devin, she started to get really burned out by that. It started to really take a toll on her. And she thought, I don't know if I can continue doing this because I feel so ineffective in what it is that I'm doing. And she said, what made a difference for her was changing her perspective. She said, my role, I don't know what their path is, and I can't walk it for them. What I do is I provide the resource and let go of the outcome. It's up to them what they want to do with it. My role here, it's important. I can't do everything. I do have an important role to play, but then I need to let go of it. So just provide the resource and let go of the outcome. Um, yeah, somebody's saying, I always explain all the resources they have. If they don't want them, I respect it. When they come back asking for those resources, I don't blame them for not using them prior. Yeah, that's such a good way to look at it. Again, we don't know what is the right timeline for them, what steps are the right ones for them. I think this is important in terms of boundary setting, both for them and, because they're not likely to come back to us if we're the type of person who's mad at them for not following our advice, right? So I think it's important for them, and it's also important for us. I mean, if we are going to continually feel let down because the person is not taking the steps that we think they need to take, we're not going to be able to sustain the kind of career that we need to. So, and then just a couple more points on this idea of boundary setting. And this is a quote that I really love. I love Anne Lamott. She's a writer. She's got a number of books out, including a new one that came out recently. And I heard her on a podcast a little while ago. I think Aaron will drop the link for that podcast in the chat. And one of the things that was interesting to me is the podcast host asked her about this quote that she had, something she had written years before, where she said, "Help is the sunny side of control." And I thought, what a strange statement, you know? And I hope that I can make this point. It's kind of a nuanced point because I'm not saying don't help people, and she's not saying don't help people. She says, I am a helper in the world. I have an intention to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Our most precious offering, I'm just quoting from her in this podcast. Our most precious offering, I think, is to make time and listen. Okay, so we do show up for people and we help them. But she says, what we need to be thoughtful about is we don't want to kind of, as part of what we're doing, we're saying we're helping you, but what we really want is for you to listen to us. Like, you have to do the thing that I'm telling you to. Like, I want to help you, woman who's in an abusive relationship, but only if you follow my advice and get to that shelter tonight. Right? That's me kind of taking over for her, taking control in a situation where she's not had enough control in her life already. And so this was the quote that she shared. Lighthouses don't go running all over an island looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining. And that kind of gets to me at that same point of, we provide what help we can, but then we have to let go. We can't take over for people. We have to be willing to recognize that they have a path to walk and we can't walk it for them. All right, I hope that was clear enough for you. If you are interested in this topic and want to hear more, I do recommend listening to that podcast, which Erin has dropped in the chat. And then there's one final thing I wanted to share on boundary setting, and that's that sometimes we have to be willing to put it down. Like, we have to be willing to find a way to take a break from all the ruminating and the worrying about work. We need to shift gears. This is Anne Lamott. I have another great quote from her. She's got wonderful, wonderful quotes. So she has this one: almost anything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. So sometimes we just have to unplug for a few minutes. And I think in particular at the end of the workday, if we can give ourselves a little bit of transition time. So listen to fun music on your ride home. Maybe, if you are somebody who does public transportation, get off a few stops before home so that you can do a little bit of walking or a bike ride before you get home. Engage with exercise, art, meditation, mindfulness, and laughter. Remember to laugh. When I was preparing for this, I started thinking about what are the things that make me laugh. And I remembered, for some reason, Will Ferrell makes me laugh so hard. Have you seen that movie Anchorman? There's a part where all of the anchors from the different news stations come in and they have like a fight with each other. Every time I watch that scene, I am weeping with laughter. Yeah, so I'm curious, what are the things that make you laugh, and keep them close to you, like have a little spot on your phone where you save the videos that make you laugh. It's so important that we find those little breaks. Yeah, and Erin has dropped an article in the chat. I hope you'll take a look at on the importance of these breaks. If you are thinking to yourself, well, I don't have time for a break, which I get. I know we all get really busy at work. Let me just let you know what this article covers is that benefits of taking a break, even during the work day, like a 15-minute break in the middle of the workday, includes increased creativity, better problem solving. It improves your mental and physical health. You have better decision making and better memory, all from taking breaks. Yeah, and I love it. So somebody is saying funny pet videos is the thing that makes her laugh. And somebody else is saying, talking to a friend. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that. because that is where we are going next. We have to make sure that we have people around us. Somebody's saying, I laughed so hard when Will Ferrell screamed, Santa coming, and Elf. Yeah, I watched Elf this year. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. I don't know if this is the Gen X in me, but man, Will Ferrell is hilarious. Okay, so we need to make sure that we have people around us. This was a quick, I guess, just a couple of statistics I wanted to share with you, particularly around this idea of, do I feel like I have friends at work? Are there people there that care about me? Do I have people that I can talk to when I'm having a bad day or I want to share a funny video with? Is there somebody that I could have that conversation with? So more than half of people who had left their job in the last 6 months lacked a sense of belonging. And then this second statistic I think is particularly important given what we've seen about turnover. A lot of our workforces now have newer people. You know, I spoke with a police officer a little while ago who said in his department, I think he said 70% of the officers were under the age of 30. So then when you see that coupled with this statistic about people feeling loneliness at work, particularly people who are newer on the jobs, it just makes it clear how important it is that we are doing what we can to foster small connections. I am going to share with you, the entire time I was at DOJ, if you had asked me, I would have said, oh, I hate small talk. I don't engage in small talk. I thought it was a waste of time. Like, let's just get to work. We have a lot of work to do. And I think that is true. Of course, we have a lot of work to do, but um, small talk actually has a lot of value. It builds small connections between us. So, you know, for instance, that this is somebody who has a dog and likes to talk about their dog, and now you have a little thing that you can talk about. Or, you know, this is somebody who loves watching Saturday Night Live, and now you have that to talk about. Those little connections can be the basis of so much more. And in addition, it is also helpful for us. You know, there was a study that was done. This is what changed my mind about small talk. I read this study that found that everybody feels better after engaging in small talk, even people who say they hate small talk. And so I thought, okay, but probably not me, right? I'm probably the exception to that rule. But I will tell you, because I read this study that evening, I went to the grocery store, and as I was checking out, I chatted with the woman who was checking me out of the grocery store, just, you know, small talk. And I realized as I was walking to my car that I was smiling. And it has borne out that in general, I feel better when I engage in those quick little conversations. So do what you can to foster those small connections. Notice too the people that you are missing at work. You know, there was a guy that I worked with for a while at DOJ who I just kind of never bothered to get to know him. He did this area of financial litigation that I didn't know much about and sounded really hard and confusing to me. And I just kind of never bothered. And then there was one day after he had been there about a year where we happened to be seated next to each other at a work dinner. And I discovered that this guy was hilarious. He was an improv comedian. He had been in all these commercials. I thought, I can't believe I've been working with this guy for a year and I had no idea about him. And it enriched my life. You know, there was a new person that I could chat with who I was happy to see. It also meant that later on, when I had a question about that area of financial litigation that was so confusing, um, it made me happy to see him. You know, I was happy to go talk with him because I already liked him. So yeah, I'm seeing some great comments here in the chat. People are saying, one person says, I call it doing my rounds when I get out of the office and I want to talk to my coworkers. Yeah, lots of people are, you know, one person says, I have a coworker, we both love Elvis. That gives us something to chat about. That's wonderful. Wonderful. And then lots of people are also saying, I'm having the opposite problem. You know, my circle of friends at work is a dot. Like, I just don't have those people, or the people that I work with. It's kind of a toxic environment where actually people are bringing each other down. Um, yeah, so you know, it's hard. I think it is important. And that's really the point of this is find your tribe, you know. Maybe it's not somebody in your immediate office, but let's see what we can do to find those people, and then check in with them. there was a great article in the New York Times recently. I can't remember if you've got this one, Aaron. I hope you do. Let me just see. Maybe I can drop it into you, and then, oh, you do have it. Great. So Aaron dropped it in the chat. This article that is from a couple of years ago, it talked about this study where they had people just do a quick check-in with a friend, like just send a text like, hey, buddy, thinking of you, like very simple, very easy like that. And then they had both people rate the impact of that. So the person who sent the text, like, how do you think that affected your friend who received that? And they're like, oh, I don't think it was probably that big a deal. And then the person who received it, consistently, the sender, the person who initiated the check-in, underestimated how valuable it was to the person who received it. I think we don't recognize how important it is to others to feel seen. So just doing that quick check-in, somebody said doing their rounds, it's more helpful than I think we realize. And also, which is covered in the chat, in that article in the chat, those interactions, those little small talk kinds of interactions overwhelmingly build up our sense of purpose and our sense of well-being. So I'm going to ask you now to try to think of maybe 3 people that you think of as somebody that's part of your tribe. Just it could be anybody, somebody you work with, somebody in your family, somebody in your community, a neighbor, somebody in your faith community, just somebody that you think of as in your tribe. Like, let's try to think of 3. And then what I want you to do, if you're able, is pull out your phone right now and send them a quick text message and just say, hey, thinking of you. Or you could say, I'm in this training and she asked about who are the people who are there for you, and I thought of you. So just send them a little text message right now. And I would love if you would drop in the chat done when you've got that, when you've finished. Oh, this is great. In the chat, somebody's saying, I set an alarm for Tuesday, Thursday, reach out to my buddy. We died. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Excellent. Yeah, good. I love that you all are doing that. Fantastic. Let me know if you hear back. I'd love to see that in the chat if you hear back from them. Because yeah, people are saying send a text to an old friend. That's fantastic. Love it. Great. Somebody says we have group chats where we check in weekly, if not daily. I love it. I love it. Good job. Okay. And then remember that you have those people, right? So when you are having a hard day, reach out to one of them. They would be grateful to hear from you, right? We just talked about that, right? That we underestimate how much people value from hearing from us. Remember that on the day where you're thinking, oh, I'm so whiny, or I'm so like angry, or just not that fun right now. Reach out anyway. I think you will be surprised. I will tell you, this is something that I have not been very good about in my life. I have tended to say like, well, I don't want to burden them. I like what I'm dealing with is really hard, and I just don't want them to have I feel like I'm spreading the ick is kind of the way I thought of it. But I will tell you, I've kind of shifted my thinking on this for 2 reasons. One is that, yeah, somebody here is saying it's hard to reach out, and they already have so much on their plate. You don't want to dump further on them. Yes, I'm right there with you. That is exactly how I have felt. I will note though that one of the things I have discovered about myself is that part of why I was not reaching out is because I it was hard for me to admit that I was affected by what I was going through. Um, and I would tell myself, oh, well, it's about confidentiality, or it's about protecting them. But there's ways to talk about it that are not really bringing them into the ick, if you know what I mean. You don't have to go through a lot of detail about what it is that you saw or heard about that day, but just saying something like, I had a really hard one today. This guy came in and he's going through a lot, and I don't know if I can help him. And is really weighing on me, and I can't stop thinking about it. None of that is really burdening them or sharing confidentiality. And from what I've experienced, it has made me feel better than I thought it would. I also thought like, well, I'm kind of introverted. I don't really need to share things to feel better. But for me personally, and if you were somebody who is telling yourself this, maybe give it a shot. I actually do feel better when I open up a little bit. even if it's just venting, even if I'm just, whining, like this is kind of the way that I criticize myself about it. But I really do feel better afterwards. So give it a shot. I think it is important for us to remember that we're not alone. And I will tell you, having been somebody who is often on the other side of that conversation, so people will often come to me and share, like, something that's weighing on them. And then afterward, they'll say, Gosh, I'm so sorry for going on like this. And I know you're busy and you must have a lot on your mind too. And I don't mean to burden you. 0% of the time have I felt like, oh, you're right. This is too much for me. you know? Um, I am usually grateful, always 100% of the time grateful that the person has opened up to me. So I would just urge you to try to get a little bit better about reaching out to others for support when you need it. Yeah, somebody has a great comment here in the chat. We can walk beside others in their trauma. It doesn't mean we have to carry their trauma. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Thank you. Yeah, and then somebody else is saying, talking about their peer support team. I'm curious if your office has a peer support team. I know sometimes they are just phenomenal. Some offices, it seems like it's less helpful, but for this person, their peer support team is really helpful. All conversations are confidential. I think it can be really helpful, in particular, to have somebody who understands your role and maybe has kind of walked a similar path before. I think that can be really helpful too. Okay, great. And then here's another thing I wanted to just share that can help in terms of building our resilience over time. And that's to remember your why, remember your purpose, why you chose to do this in the first place. There's this parable that I've read a few times. I just love it. It's about a traveler who is walking down the road, and he comes across three people who are working on the side of the road. And he walks up to the first one and he says, "What are you doing?" And that one says, "Busting up rocks." And then he walks a little further and he says to the second one, "What are you doing?" And that one says, "Earning a living." And then he walks a little further and he goes to the third one and he says, "What are you doing?" And that one says, "I'm building a cathedral." It is so easy for us to get caught up in the minutia of the day to day, the office politics, the annoying administrivia thing that you have to deal with, the difficult interaction you just had with, a client or a colleague. And when when that happens, it can be difficult for us to remember why we were doing this in the first place. But if we can zoom out a little bit, it can really help us to maintain the energy, the resilience we need over the long term. There was a study that was done by a guy that I read about actually in a book by Adam Grant. I don't know if he did the study or not. But in the study, they had people, these were students at a call center for a college. So what they were doing is they were calling up alums from the college and asking them to donate money to the college. And people were constantly hanging up on them and saying no. And the burnout rates and turnover were really, really high in this call center. And then they did one thing. They showed the people who worked in the call center a video that was an interview with somebody who had received money as a result of the efforts of the people in the call center. And he talked about what a difference it had made in his life and um, how grateful he was for having received that money that allowed him to continue his studies. Um, Rates of burnout went way down, turnover went way down, and also, frankly, their productivity went up. They started to bring in a lot more money. I think if we can connect with the benefit of what we're doing, it can really help us get through the hard times. It's so hard because often in criminal justice, our interaction with somebody is, I'm going to see you right here for the worst 6 months of your life, and then I'm never going to see or hear from you again. So think about if there are ways to engage with your larger purpose. Maybe for you that means volunteering in a community or keeping in touch with a victim, saving those thank you notes and maybe posting them so that you see them. Let me also say, this parable, I kind of take issue a little bit with it because it's almost kind of criticizing the second person who says, I'm earning a living. I also have to say, earning a living is not a bad purpose. if you can think about what is it that I am able to do, like I am able to help my kid go to a school that is a really good school for them, or I'm able to support my mom. Like, I don't think that it's bad if your purpose is to earn a living, because that can be a really incredible purpose. So just thinking about, oh yeah, great comment here in the chat. So like Carrie Underwood says in the movie Soul Surfer, I haven't seen that movie. Sometimes it's hard to see the full picture when you're looking at it really close. So take a step back. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Just a few more things on this topic in particular. One thing that has helped me when I'm in a phase where I have felt burned out, there was a little while where I was at the Justice Department where we had very little kids. We had twins when my son was 2 years old. So we had 3 kids under 3 for a little while, and then 3 kids under 4, and 3 kids under 5. And it was, working a pretty stressful job. And I just felt for a little while like I was running as fast as I could just to stay in place every day. It was like a hamster on a wheel, sprinting full out just to stay exactly where I was. And I got really depressed and demoralized. And the thing that really saved me was I started counting my wins. So this was just at the end of every day, I would list 3 things that I did well that day. And these were not like, I ran a marathon. It was like I got Henry to eat a green bean today. Yes, like little tiny wins. I managed to get out that report that I've been working on. I remembered to check in on a friend. I remembered to bring my lunch today. Little things, but it really helped shift my focus away from all the things I wasn't getting done. I'm sure all of us, every single one of you who is here on this call right now, I'm sure could think of 20 things that you need to do off the top of your head. But can you think of even one thing that you have done well in the last week? If you can, I would love it if you would drop it in the chat. What is something that you are proud of yourself for doing in the last week? Again, it can be small, but just something that you've done well. Because when we start to notice those good things, it just shifts our purpose, our thinking away a little bit from all of the things that we are lacking and failing, and more toward the things that we're doing right, the things that we're doing good. I'm seeing these great ones. Some people are saying that's really hard, and I will tell you, I've done this before in-person trainings, and it is astonishing how quiet the room gets when I ask what's something you're proud of yourself for having done. So I'm seeing great ones here. I planted my small garden. I went to the gym for the first time in almost 8 months. Meal planning, taking care of my physical health, reminding a client that their sentence does not define them. Ah, fantastic. Exercise, got my recordings done for an online class. Well done. Meal prep, walking daily, organize my Tupperware drawer. Oh my God, I am so with you, girl. That is so satisfying. Kept my tiny little fitness goal. Oh my goodness, these are fantastic. Took the time to play tic-tac-toe with my 6-year-old. Just beautiful, beautiful. And I hope, this is not really a talk about culture and leadership, but just think about that. And if that's something that you could spread. Some people are saying, at the end of my team's weekly meeting, we all share a win from the week. It might be something that others in your environment could benefit from as well. I got caught up on my laundry. I built an outdoor dog walk. These are so good. I showed a lot of patience with my sassy 14-year-old. Oh my gosh, I'm right there with you. These are so heartening and wonderful. Thank you all for sharing these. Just great. And this, I guess, helps also lead into this next point about expressing gratitude. Again, it's about mindset. So one of the things that I do right now is every morning when I get up and I make my cup of tea, while my tea is brewing, which takes 4 minutes, so this is not a lengthy process, I write down what I'm feeling grateful for that day. And it's just a way of reminding me again of my larger purpose, not, oh, I'm mad I have to do X, or, oh, I'm still upset about Y from yesterday, but just let me look around and be grateful that I'm here and that I have the opportunities that I do to connect with people like you and really feel like I'm making a difference in the world. So thank you. I can't get over how awesome all of these wins are in the chat. Thank you so much. I organized my linen closet recently too. It was very satisfying. All right, my friends, we have just a couple minutes before the Q&A. So let me just share this final piece, and then I'm going to share with you my contact information. Remember, if you have any questions, drop them in the little Q&A box separate from the webinar chat. You see a little Q&A. So this final point I want to stress to you is that this journey toward lifelong resilience, it's not a light switch, it's not like, oh, I'm gonna, just change one thing and then everything is going to fall into place. It's little actions every day. In some ways it would be easier, right? If we could just make some huge change and then everything is different the next day. It's not like that. It's a little bit at a time. It took a while probably to get to where you are, and it's going to take a little while longer to get to a place of feeling like you're thriving at work. But we can do it through just little actions every day. And I often think of the metaphor of a ship, right? Like if you try to giant ship, if you try to turn it too fast, it'll break. But if you just shift maybe 1 degree every day, very quickly, you're on a very different trajectory. So that's what I would hope that you aim for over the next week is just 1 degree. And I would ask actually right now in the chat, what's something that you would commit to doing over the next week? We talked about things like remembering your purpose. We talked about finding your tribe, setting and maintaining boundaries. What's something that we've talked about today that you would like to work on this next week? Thank you. I'm seeing great ones. People loving myself more, meditating, exercising, asking my crew for wins, stress management. This is just fantastic. Processing patience, reflecting on 3 things I did well that day. Fantastic. Going home on time. Yeah, good. Trying small talk. Fabulous. Oh, these are great, you all. I hope that you will stay in touch with me. I feel like you are my tribe now, and I hope that you continue to be so. You see my email there. If there's ever anything I can do to support you, if you want some study that I mentioned, or I don't know, anything, please reach out. You see all the social media ways to stay in touch with me as well. And then in addition, every Thursday, I send out a text message. It's just a free text message that I do as a service, really for anybody who's ever been in a training with me is what I do these for. So you can join the text list through this texting the word Blackbird or scanning that and just sending me a text. It goes out every Thursday at about noon Eastern time, and it's just about empathy and leadership and resilience. So if you're interested, that's how you join that. Oh, good. It looks like some of you are already on the text list. I'm so glad. Speaking of counting your wins, figuring out how to do a QR code. Oh my goodness. I was so proud of myself for that. All right. So thank you all so much. Let's shift to questions if we have any. Erin, are there any questions that we should get to here?
Oh, yeah, we definitely have some great questions. And I gotta agree with you on the whole QR code thing. I have to test it, and about half the time I get it right the first time. So I really appreciate your presentation, Kate. And also, I'm
Thank
feeling a
you.
lot better about my QR ineptitude. So folks, I wanted to let you know our next leadership webinar is called the Organizationally Intelligent Leader, Upping Our Game with Change Management, and it's scheduled for May 16th. So if that sounds like a webinar you would like to join us for, please go to the Justice Clearinghouse website. From the menu bar, select May 16th, and you'll be able to register. And then we do have more webinars scheduled with Kate. The next one is on January 22nd, 2025. And looking forward to that one as well, Kate. All right. And if you're ready, I'd love to start going through these questions.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Perfect. First question. I love this one from Sherry. Sherry works in career services with students and alumni getting their BS degree in criminal justice. Any suggestions on getting into criminal justice at the entry level roles and positions?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question. It's been a long time, and I don't really work with people who are entering the workforce. So I would appreciate if anybody in the chat has ideas on that. Please drop that in the chat. I will say, I do a little bit of work with our local law enforcement community, and what I've heard there is they are really eager to have more people who want to go into law enforcement. And what they encourage is don't limit yourself. Don't think, oh, I've had bad credit in the past or something like that, and therefore I can't do this. They really do want to get more people into the field. And so don't keep yourself away from it. Some people in the chat are saying, do your internships at places you may want to work. I think that's a great idea. You know, when I was at DOJ, the U.S. Attorney's Office Victim Witness Unit was a great place. They took college interns. Um, yeah, some people are saying I started off volunteering with the juvenile court system. Some people are saying be physically fit. It helps you to not worry about the mental part. I think that's probably really true. You know, it probably helps also managing a lot of the mental stress. People are saying internships, ride-alongs, AmeriCorps. One person says I did 2 internships where I work. And at the U.S. Probation Office, they take interns as well. That's fantastic. You know, I first found my job at DOJ through USA Jobs. You know, I don't think you have to have had great contacts or anything like that in order to do that. I think it's worthwhile. Those internships, I think, are really helpful in terms of helping you understand what it is that you want to do. Me doing an internship in law school was really helpful for me in understanding what role I wanted as well. Yeah, and somebody is saying also think about working in shelters. I mean, that's where I started, was just volunteering at a local shelter as well. And I know there are child advocacy centers as well for people who are interested in working with kids. Great question. Thank you. And great, thanks for all the help, audience.
Yeah, I agree. I was just about to say the same. All right, next question from Corinna. Seeing your support system all retire is very lonely. How do you deal with this loneliness?
Yeah, it is really hard. And I'm so sorry that you're experiencing that right now. Um, you know, I think that a lot of it is kind of being willing to put ourselves out there a little bit more, those small connections. And one thing that I have always done, I come from a history of shyness. I've always been the person who felt really uncomfortable and shy in group settings. I'm going to tell you my little secret for that. Again, maybe this helps you. What I would do is if I'm in a group setting where I think I don't know anybody here and I feel really shy, I pretend that I'm one of the hosts. Maybe it sounds really silly, but if I pretend that I'm one of the hosts, then I am likely to go up to the person who is not talking to anybody else and just say, "Hey, how are you?" and make them feel welcome. And that is how I've built some of my lifelong friendships, is just noticing the person who doesn't have anybody to talk to and spending a little time with them as well. Because I think a lot of us are feeling lonely right now. It's kind of an epidemic of loneliness that we're experiencing in the US. Um, so I think if you are experiencing it, you are not alone in experiencing that. I also am seeing in the chat, people are saying volunteering can really help. I think that's a really wise thing as well. Somebody is saying smile, someone will approach you. Somebody else says, I enjoy going to farmers market to take my minds off things and join dancing lessons where you don't need a partner. That's great. I think that's a really good one too. I spoke with a friend recently who's going through something similar where she's kind of a senior person in her office, and it's very difficult to feel like she can open up because most of the people there are reporting to her. And she said, you know, I think I'm going to take like a conversational Spanish class or maybe a painting class, just as a way of building connections outside of work. And then, yeah, other comments here in the chat. There are lots of positives about working in the criminal justice system. One of them is the connections that we make as we find resources and programs for probation. Reach out to one of them you really felt a connection to as a volunteer. Great advice. I hope this is helpful. And then somebody is saying, I knit as my yoga when I need to wind down from the stress of work. I wish that I could knit, you all. I tried it for a little while. This is when I was at DOJ and was so stressed all the time. And people kept saying, knit, it'll really help you. I tried to make a scarf, and it ended up being, it was like a pot holder that was about this long because I was tying the knots so tight. I was like, I don't think knitting is for me. Yeah, other people are
Yeah.
like, I can't do it either.
Oh, that's
Excellent. Thank you.
fantastic.
Aaron, do we have time for more questions, or do we have any more questions?
We do. We've got 3 more right now.
Mhm.
The next one is from Ralph. What do we do when we don't know that we're being stressed or think it's the norm? Sometimes it's stressful to retreat from stress.
Yeah, it's really good. So one of the things I think we all have to get better at is noticing our warning signs that we're experiencing stress. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it gets very obvious and it kind of clobbers you over the head, right? But often it's a lot more subtle. And if we can get better at noticing the more subtle signs of it, we can head them off and kind of take care of ourselves a little bit better over the long term. So think about what the warning signs are for you. We talked about some at the beginning, right? So that weakened immune system, the cough that won't go away, the headache that won't go away, insomnia. A few others are things like when things that are normally fun start to feel like a burden. Like you're somebody, gosh, I used to love running, or I used to love to dance, and I can't even remember the last time I did it, and I can't even imagine ever having the energy for that. That's a sign that you're probably experiencing burnout. So I think that's some of those things. And I'd love to hear other kind of warning signs in the chat. One person is saying, my family told me. I know. And that I hope that you took it in the spirit that they intended, which I hope was as being helpful. Sometimes we don't notice it in ourselves, but the people around us will say, man, you're prickly lately. So try to think about that, and hear it as this is somebody who's trying to help you. One person is saying, if I start dreaming about work, I know that's my sign I need to change something. Yelling at the kids. Yeah, you are definitely not alone. That like we kind of can hold it together all day at work, and then we get home and it's the people that we love the most who sometimes bear the brunt of it. Yeah, these are great. Um, Wonderful comments here. Thank you. Avoiding calling clients, exhaustion. Yeah. So get to know those warning signs. And then when you see them, um, double down on all the things we've been talking about, right? So your boundary setting, reach out for support, remember your purpose. All those things will help to counteract when you start to see those warning signs. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. Time for hopefully a couple more questions here. The next one comes from Sarah. I find myself turning off my emotions just to get through the day, but I pay for it at the end of the day. I tend to feel very mentally drained when I get home. Are there better ways to handle the stress?
Yeah, it's such a good question. You're definitely not alone on that. It's something I've done as well. Because you think, I got to be professional and I really, really need to show up for this person right now. So I'm just going to squash down my feelings because I can't have that right now. That kind of response is what leads to the exhaustion that you're talking about. It also can take a toll on our health over time. So just a few ideas on that. And again, I'd love other thoughts from the chat. A few things that can help. One is like breathing through it and just acknowledging this is really hard. Just acknowledging to yourself, wow, this is a really hard thing. And I'm just going to take a deep breath. Okay. And the key is deep, slow breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, and try to exhale longer than you inhale. Okay. So maybe inhale 2, exhale 4. Okay. Another thing is name your feeling. Just notice, gosh, this is a hard conversation. How am I feeling right now? Feeling angry, actually. I'm really angry that he had to go through all of this, or I'm feeling really sad. Just naming your feeling helps you to process it a little bit more. It helps you to feel more in control of it in the moment, and is kind of the opposite of that. Just squash it down and pretend I don't have emotions. And then one more is engaging one of your 5 senses. This is just a mindfulness technique. So notice the smell of coffee from the next room, or hear the sound of construction from outside of your window. Again, it just grounds you in the present moment and is a way of kind of calming your nervous system. So I hope that that helps. And I should mention, I'm going to be doing a longer training with Justice Clearinghouse on all of these issues of resilience that will be available later this year. So if you're interested, please keep an eye out for that.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's the online course.
Yeah,
Yep, perfect. Excited to see that one come together. All
yeah.
right, our last question for today is how do you set boundaries with difficult clients you have to work with? Sometimes we don't have the option but to tolerate bad behavior in order to do our jobs.
Yeah, I am sure you are dealing with some incredibly challenging clients sometimes. This is another area where I'd love advice from people in the chat. Let me tell you how I handle that. Um, Boundary setting is something that applies even like you are not there to be a punching bag. That's not fair to you and it's not appropriate if your workplace is asking that of you. You should not be subject to name calling, threats, certainly not any kind of violence. So, yeah, somebody is saying reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. Absolutely. So often when we are dealing with clients who are in that phase, they are so elevated emotionally that they're having trouble controlling their emotions. When that is happening, they're not thinking very clearly. And so what we need to do is make sure that we are setting clear boundaries, but doing it in a way that they can hear us. So I'll just do this very quickly. So imagine I'm working with a client and I'm trying to get information and like I can't get a word in edgewise. They're just like going around and around. They're saying the same thing. They're getting faster and louder as they're talking. I think of that as somebody who is caught in a whirlpool. They're just kind of caught in a whirlpool of their emotions and they need to be yanked out. So what I do for that is I just lean back. Usually when somebody's talking, I'm nodding, I'm encouraging them to go on. But if they're in a whirlpool, I kind of lean back and I just give myself a second to breathe and calm myself. And then I very quietly but firmly say their name. So I lean back and then John. Like you hear, it's calm. I'm not shouting over them. I'm just trying to get their attention. And usually they're like, what? Oh, they've kind of forgotten I'm there. And then I'm in control of the conversation again. And I can say, thank you for sharing that. There's a little bit more we need to cover. And you can kind of go on from there. If instead what they're doing is threatening to you, they're calling you names or something like that, then it's similar, but with a short instruction. And really the shorter, the better, like 3 words or less if you can swing it. So you're calming yourself, calming yourself. John, no name calling. So you're just trying to give them, this is the boundary, right? And then you can say, we need to end this now if they're not able to recognize that boundary. Again, you're not there to be a punching bag, but sometimes they just need to hear that because it can be difficult when people are in such an elevated state. One person is saying, I like to use the phrase, your feelings are valid, but the behavior is not. And I do not allow my children / strangers / coworkers to talk to me this way. And I will not allow it in this working relationship. Beautiful clarity. I love it. All right. I think we're probably out of time there, but reach
We
out. If we didn't
are.
get to your question, please reach out, send me an email.
Absolutely. Kate, any closing comments you'd like to share?
Just thank you all so much. I am so grateful for everything you are doing every day for all of us in our society, and especially for all the ways that you are taking care of yourself as you do it. Thank you.
And thank you from us here at the Justice Clearinghouse. Definitely appreciate everyone in the audience taking their time and the work that you do every single day. And with that, this concludes this morning's Justice Clearinghouse webinar. Take care, everyone. Man, look at this wave of emoticons here. That's so
So
cool,
nice.
Kate. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.